Hey, it's 42. Man, it's been a moment. I might do more of a follow up on the population genetics video. It deserves it. I'll probably cut it up in spots, release them as individual segments. So it's one point after another. But for now, I wanted to do a follow up on Black Power's M.E.T.A because I see it churning. And it's one of those things where if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, because a lot of what's going on is the type of power move that you first had to make. And I'm talking about how black people in America just rejected two, I don't know, ambiguous, I guess Cory Booker's black, Kamala Harris is more Indian. She is, I think her dad is a mulatto. Rejected them, but in a way, it was a good power move, definitely. And I was part of it. The reason is simple. The hashtags say it all. I don't really have to repeat that. The hashtags were tangibles 2020. They aren't offering anything, no agenda, no black vote. And deeper than that, Kamala Harris was just doing a dough dance. I mean, it was first we were hearing about her playlist. Then she was dancing to Cardi B. Then we were hearing about how she likes Converse. And Jason Black examined who's on her campaign team. And it was this white woman. I don't remember her last name, but we were joking because I don't remember her first name. I think either it was her first or last name. One of the names was Lily. I think it was her first name was Lily. So she became Lily White. And it appears that she's the person behind Kamala's attempt to attract, let me say her name right, Kamala's attempt to attract the black vote, which I think that might have worked 20 years ago. Because really, her pandering is not even as good as Hillary. Like, at least Hillary said some shit where, like, she said that she had hot sauce in her purse. And I'm like, okay, that's some black shit. You are married to Bill Clinton, ha ha ha. Not offering anything except for, I think the only thing Hillary Clinton offered that was specific to black people was, in comparison to Trump, she's not with stop and frisk. There were probably some other things, but it was always about it ain't so bad instead of power. And you can't make a power move when one person is just basically, in Trump, a blatant corporatist, an open up corporatist. And you could argue that he's a populist in a few ways here and there. And then you have the closeted corporatists like Hillary Clinton. There are some other differences that I think are key if it wasn't at a point where it's like, okay, we need something specific. You know, if they were all offering reparations, then we could look at other things. And I really just shortened it to reparations. And one of the reasons why I did is, and this is something I didn't even mention in Black Power's M.E.T.A, where I went over reparations and why I came up with a specific amount, is there are a lot of things that basically just equate to reparations anyway. A lot of tangible things that, for lack of a better term or another term, is reparations. And looking at the history of reparations, the USA is the reparations capital of the world. So it's no reason for us to pussyfoot it or act like it's a bad word. I mean, I remember, and this is recently, in one of Roland Martin's broadcasts, he said, amongst a bunch of hucklebucks, he always has a bunch of hucklebucks. Like, he never has any real core black first people, and when he does have them, it was like Umar Johnson, and they jumped him. they jumped on his ass. I don't know why, but, other than he's Boule and blah, 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 whatever. But it is what it is when, he said something like black people won't be happy unless reparations are offered. Well, you're goddamn right. And there was a time when it would have been difficult to bring it up. And part of that is we've been down this road before. We had Reagan, who was an open white supremacist, an open racist. And it's like, well, let's replace him with someone who's just not racist. We get Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton, not open with it. And to be fair, a lot of people criticize Bill Clinton because of the crime bill, but black people were so dumb, we went along with it. I might have brought up this before, but it was actually popular among African Americans. And the whole thing was, it's not us, it's them niggas over there. And a lot of the people who were saying that became those niggas over there. You know, okay, we're fine with 3 strikes. That way criminals will stop criming. And then all of a sudden people are getting arrested for bullshit. I was in jail once with somebody who was facing a 3rd strike because he was homeless stealing food. You know what I mean? Like, that was going to be the reason to lock his ass up for a couple decades. And he was probably like 55. He might have died in prison if he got the full term. But I do remember black people were okay with it. The only person who's brought that up that I know of is Haven Bullets. So we went along with Clinton, okay. And because we had just come off abject, in-your-face racist with Reagan, and Bush not so much in your face. So even though, like, if you look at Bush's history, it may be shit that's even dirtier than that, but that's things I haven't studied, but on the peripheral. So then we get Clinton. And now, after the dust is cleared, we got a problem with Clinton. Okay, that's fine. I had a problem with it back then, but I was young. It wasn't a major thing that was on my mind. I'm, trying to finish school and all that. So time goes, you have Obama. And there was a push to get Obama, how do you feel about reparations, And Obama was against reparations. Now, there are also some things that Obama did, few people talk about it, that were specifically for black people, and black men at that. But even those things, and Mr. Research has talked about those, every now and then you'll hear somebody bring them up, but those things are just like what you got from what Hillary Clinton was offering. And it's not so bad. We're going to make things not so bad for African Americans. And they're not really good at that, because if they were good at that, then they would focus on something that's more visible and more blatant, like dirty cops. Their focus on that, I haven't heard anything about what would really do something, and that's punishing cops. Now, people have brought up that Kamala was against body cameras, which would have been something. And was something in some, I think it was something that states could flip around, because they were making laws to change the body camera rules right away. So it depends on the state. So at that point, it's like black people were like, hold on. Nothing is moving the needle for black power coming out of government. Government was who was responsible for either the straight up, right from the government human rights violations, or failing to protect black people, as back then it was the Republican Party who was closer to, and they were kind of like the Democratic Party. They were, you could say they ended slavery, you could say the Democratic Party ended Jim Crow, and that's really where the loyalty to both parties came and went. Like literally came and went based on that. But there was a lot of promises to protect black people coming from the Republicans that they didn't live up to. And not just that, they also promised reparations, didn't live up to it. So yeah, it did hit the fan where black people were like, whoa. This is not good enough. We're going to need something tangible. So you get, tangible 2020, hashtag, don't disagree with that at all. You get the A.D.O.S movement. I'm glad that, that's something that's recognized. And man, that whole push triggered something in the Democratic Party. And it revealed that the Democratic Party was actually worse than I anticipated. When you got Hillary Clinton in almost a delusional, like she's got some issue with her brain, talking about that Kamala Harris is dealing with misogyny and racism. And the thing is, the main people that were going after Kamala Harris and Cory Booker are liberals and blacks. So Brainiac Hillary is attacking the core of the Democratic Party, the main people who vote for Democrats, the main people who vote for Democrats in the highest percentage. And the reason I think they're doing it is it's about money. Like a real populist stance, it interferes with their capitalist donators, the people, the donors. Because you get a populist in there like A.D.O.S, Alexandria, or you get, well, not a capitalist, I mean like a pure liberal. You get a pure liberal in there, like A.D.O.S and Bernie Sanders, something like that. And the capitalists, they're not going to feel that. They're, it's like, oh, we're putting all this money to Hillary and Kamala, and this is what we're getting in return? We're going to get higher taxes on us? No, we're not going to go that route. No. So that's one of those things where these are the people that control the media. And you got Hillary saying that. Then you also have Howard Dean calling Tariq Nasheed a misogynist. If that's the thing they're going to start calling black men, remember, no group of men have voted for women's rights and gay rights more than black men. So if we're the misogynists and we're the homophobes, why don't we just not vote? And I agree with Haven Bullets. Top to bottom, the Democratic Party is better for America, but eventually you have to have your Occupy and Tea Party moment where it's like, hey, this is our agenda. If you don't follow it, fuck you. And if you're going to call me a misogynist, fuck you. And if you're going to call me a racist, oh no, who they're calling racist is Bernie. They call them Bernie bros, but it's basically people who want real liberals, because the same people they call Bernie bros, they want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's as black as as Kamala. So that's what I mean. The Democratic Party is eating itself from the inside out. And that's a good thing, because it's time for us to have that moment. I would say it's overdue, but because it's coming so strong, I would rather it come strong now, because having it come so strong, that's the only reason why you have Marianne Williamson offering that pittance of $100 billion. And that's where I want to talk about, how if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Because I looked at reparations strategically. I said, you know what? If we go to the American people with a cold argument, and I'll give Williamson credit, she has a cold argument, but that cold argument, because of the amount, ends up being like Dr. Evil, where he points the bomb at the earth. I don't remember the movie that well. And he's like, oh, I want $1 million. No, you come with that cold argument. 100 billion ain't enough. Oh no. I mean, 100 billion is an insult, because, and the funny thing is, black people have reacted all over the place because they haven't ran the numbers. There's a reason why I said that 3.5 trillion is a good conversation piece. 3 trillion, 3.5 trillion. Why is that a number instead of more? Why is that a number instead of less? It's all about what you can pass in Congress. If you come, and I've heard black people say, the cost of slavery and Jim Crow is 20 trillion, 40 trillion. It's really 50 trillion. From what I've seen, it's close to 40 trillion. 20 trillion for slavery, 20 trillion for Jim Crow and redlining, mass incarceration. And even though I say, people were going along with Bill Clinton, we're complicit. Mass incarceration of black people started under Nixon. And black people are not complicit in this, because Nixon was specifically targeting blacks and liberals, not just the Black Panther Party. Just, okay, if you're selling dope, that's who's selling dope. That's who they're targeting. They were trying to criminalize blacks and liberals to keep them out of government. And that's another thing I want to bring up is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when she's talking reparations. And the reaction was negative because she's saying, it's not just slavery. And it wasn't completely negative, but when she got to the part where it's not just slavery, it's, during the time when they had the brown paper bag test and it supposedly separate but unequal. You ask how loans were getting passed out, how people were, where you were allowed to live. It wasn't separate but equal. There's no such thing as some goddamn separate but equal. That would be crazy to do. It's impossible to do. So it was separate. Let's create a class system. They created a class system and exploited it, where black people paid rent. They paid taxes and did not get benefits for paying taxes. They didn't get, and I've heard stupid racist hood rats recently that'll say, what about welfare? I'm paying taxes and you're the only person that's getting welfare if you're broke. I'm broke and I'm just going to have to suffer or make do. Welfare was a human rights violation. That's another reason to have reparations. That's what I mean. Like if slavery didn't exist, you'd still have reparations. So in that sense, Ocasio-Cortez, she's making a good argument because she's saying, hey, it ain't just about slavery. But then when you say that, you can say, okay, back then it wasn't just descendants of slaves who were affected. It was anybody who wasn't passing a brown paper bag test, anybody who might be labeled Negro, even if they were speaking some Spanish. And you have some like, I don't remember the name of that movie where Richard Pryor was trying to be Cuban so he could go play, or so he could play Major League Baseball. I think it was a movie about Satchel Paige, an old movie. Really. And that's the thing. Like she has an argument, except for there's one major flaw. You're saying that black people would then have to forgive slavery if that's what reparations is really about. Now, because the cost of slavery is so high in today's dollars, estimated 20 trillion. I didn't run these numbers. Other people have ran these. Other people have quoted these. I've ran other numbers. Because it's so high, you can't go to Congress about some goddamn 20 trillion. It's just too far out of the budget. It would affect the value of the dollar. So what becomes a sweet spot where you can approach Congress? And that's another thing I want to say in caution to Tariq and Jason Black. The fact that you got these people talking reparations, which is really what the Tangibles 2020 did, for the black vote, is a greater benefit than her trying to squeeze brown people in. Because if you really hit it in the courtroom, they'll be able to squeeze brown people in for a portion of it, because brown people were affected in areas that had paper bag tests. And that amount of money, and these are other people's estimates. I haven't really ran the numbers for Jim Crow when they quote that that's another 20 trillion. But I've listened to people do it. I've seen multiple people do it. They have good sources. It makes sense. I don't think they're bullshitting. That amount of money is beyond, they're both beyond what African Americans could get anyway. So she's not even talking about a realistic amount of money if she's going to say it's not about slavery. Well, you can't go to Congress with slavery money anyway. You can't go to Congress with Jim Crow money anyway. You probably can't go to Congress with maybe you could go with redlining money and more recent stuff and say, okay, we can pass this. And the reason why I say you can pass, and let me go back to what I was saying, finish the thought. The reason why I'm saying y'all should just be happy she's talking about it, because she's popular. And if she squeezes one in, it's going to be a lot of money. Now, you have to then counter the conversation and say, hey, if we're going to get, squeezed, if we're just going to forgive slavery, then how are you going to say all the reparations for slavery is going to be rolled into something that also affected other people? You can't just expect people classified as black to have a different standard as some Mexican that just moved in and got redlined. Some new immigrant, or even an immigrant that's been here for 100 years. That doesn't pass a paper bag test. Like this Arabian I knew. He said he couldn't pass a paper bag test in the summertime, but he could in the winter. So he was like, He was like, man, I was half black in the most literal sense, more than a mulatto could ever be, because y'all get treated full black year round, no matter how light you are. But because I was an Arabian, they only in certain areas, I was Negro, you know? So yeah, you can make an argument for people like that. And maybe I have no problem with them getting reparations, but it has to be in scope with what black people would have to forgive, because you can't face Congress with that amount of money. Now, why would I say 3 trillion? I think 3 trillion is a magic number, because when I run the numbers with 3 trillion, and I did it in a simulation of a game that Democracy Theory, which is similar to a real American budget. And I did it with that because they run the monthly budget. It's hard to find American monthly budgets. If you did 3 trillion over 30 years, and I think reparations should be spread out, I don't think it should just be about money. And I talk about that, and specifically talking about what we would need to do to the black church to make sure that this isn't just, you get the money and you spend it. This is a power move. Long-term, generational, multi-generational. This is Wakanda in America and overseas and wherever. You'd have to do something with that black church. I think you got to re-Africanize it, but it's more to that than that. But the other thing about $3 trillion is it's in range of the costs for the Iraq War. From what I've seen, the cost of the Iraq War, like 1.8 trillion. I think that's the current number that's quoted on Wikipedia. There's some uncounted costs you could add to that. And then you could add the Iraq War, and you're getting close to $3 trillion. Now, that is an argument where you can say, hey, all of these human rights violations, and they're not worth what we would give for a war, what the cost that we would borrow for a war. So not only, like, if with democracy, does it not show up on the budget? And you can look at that video, Black Power's M.E.T.A, the preview, where I talk about 3 trillion does not show up on a monthly budget. In a simulation, when I say it doesn't show up on a monthly budget, I mean, you have a pie chart and you have like I think it was a top 12 list, 15, more than that maybe. And it's all the costs, and reparations of that cost, the 3 trillion, was like 8 billion a month over 30 years. Now, 8 billion a month in that simulation was less than we would pay for school buses. So we're not worth a war. We're not worth school buses when we were the first people to die for this country. I've heard somebody try to, what you talking about, man? There were natives here. I'm like, no. The country did not exist as the USA until after the Revolutionary War. Crispus Attucks first to die. Fought in every war after that. No people have faced more human rights violations, and we're worth less than a war or two. And school buses, I'll be damned. That's why we've got to start countering these people. We've got to reach out, and this has to be a realistic number. Now, if they want to piggyback some Mexicans and whatnot under that, as long as we're getting that fat 3 trillion and the residuals, because, like the 3 trillion would be set aside. And then once all the people based on what percentage of sub-Saharan African, because that's how they've defined black. I'm okay running with that. You take your DNA test, you're 80%, you get 80% of the money. The residuals go to fixing that goddamn church, putting some sciences back in that church. And then there's some other things that I would include in the black agenda too. Sovereign laws in areas where we have the majority of a state, of a city. And that is more negotiable. And then from that undergird, we can set up shop in Africa if we want to. And that right there is cost benefit analysis, because you can do that without spending a ton of money. But realistically, and this is a problem I have with Marianne Williamson, the $100 billion. If anything, we should be chipping off $100 billion to buy up, and it wouldn't cost that much. They probably cost less than $100 million. $100 million should buy us some politicians. So it should buy us some act right and get reparations. in a realistic amount, depending on how many politicians you buy, is what you can make an argument with. That's why when you can come and say, hey, school buses, war, these people, you can forget about the fact that they built the economy that made this country wealthy. You can just disregard that. The fact that they've been victims of human rights violations to that point. How can anybody take America seriously if we're the reparations capital of the world? For white people, we're the reparations capital of the world. For the Japanese, for Native Americans, even though I think they should get a lot more. For Europe, when it got bombed up. For animals, when we mess up the environment. For capitalism, when we mess up the economy. Then we're the reparations capital of the world. But when it's black people, when we mess them up to the point where they don't even have a functional religion anymore, I won't say completely. There's some things that work out there, but it's a dysfunctional religion compared to what it was by leaps and bounds, to where you've basically invented hoods, stuck them in, criminalized them, and then re-enslaved them. But they're not worth the same amount that you'd spend on a goddamn war. That's an argument you can make. You can't go to Congress and be like, man, it's worth $40 trillion. We're gonna have to raise some taxes or something. $40 trillion is gonna hit that budget hard. That is a different thing. Now you might disagree. Okay. But you got to come with a reason why you can actually, because a lot of people say they ain't never going to do nothing. And, you can't go to Congress asking for no $100 billion Sambo. They get Samboic on that. I don't think they're right. I think they're dead wrong. I think if we buy up enough politicians and we buy politicians that know how to make an impassioned argument, and credit to Williamson, she came with a real argument. She just wasn't, the amount was bullshit. Elizabeth Warren comes with the real argument. Okay. So if we get politicians that know how to talk to people, then you can come. I know you can do it. Because I remember when gay marriage wasn't popular. And this is the thing that bothers me. Like I said, no group, if you keep calling black men some goddamn homophobes, then it's time for black men to say, oh, well, what about Obama? Wasn't he a black man? Who put him in office? Who put that stuff on the ballot? It was blacks and liberals. Because I was in a white neighborhood and they was like, hey man, we'll pay you this much if you help us put some stuff on the ballot. I'm like, okay. I took a second job because I had a part-time job. So I had 2 part-times. I was putting stuff on the ballot. I was doing the paperwork, the accounting. I was canvassing, calling people. And then it's like, okay, gay marriage. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not fitting to marry a man because it's legal. So what difference does it matter to me? It was people like me, literally, that put gay marriage on the ballot. A president with African blood, whose dad came right out of Kenya, who put gay marriage on the ballot. It's time for this intersectionality to kick back. It's time to be reciprocal. Stop all this gender war and bullshit. One thing I will never be the crab in the bucket talking about black women got it better. And I heard this gay black dude, talking about how he studies niggers. I'm like, just cause your crab pincher has a limp wrist doesn't mean you're not a crab. Crab ass. And this crab is in there grabbing ass. Gay ass crab in the barrel. Not me. No. That's one thing. Like, you can look at my old videos. I don't sit here talking about the goddamn homosexual agenda. Why, when there's so much vagina out there, would a heterosexual be goddamn concerned about a homosexual agenda? If they start shooting people with gay bullets and I start seeing men as attractive after I get shot with the gay bullet, then that's a whole different story. But because right now, let's be real, it's always been divide and conquer bullshit to where you got this dude talking about, oh, I study these niggers, and people are liking his tweet. That's insane. But you know what? This is the first step in Black Power's meta, is having your moment where it's like, hey, reparations, first thing. And I've said it, I've talked about that in that video, how you have to have an agenda. And the main agenda politically, because this is a political thing, and there are ways that you can get reparations on the private sector too. There's a couple ways. So I'm saying, hey, if there is a push for reparations, that's a realistic amount that you can make an argument for. And that argument floats. If you look at the video where Marianne Williamson makes her $100 billion Dr. Evil argument, it had way more likes than dislikes. Now, in most circles where there's anonymous people, and you mention reparations, it's like, get a job, lazy nigger. I'm like, my job right now is trying to get reparations, and I also have a job, make more money than you, and I shouldn't have to work for this, but for the fact that this country is racist. Because and then why are you right now? Why do you have a concern about reparations when you've paid so much to undergird white supremacy anyway? You've paid reparations for everybody else. Why do you have a problem now? And then these damn hood rats. Yeah, it was probably a white woman though. And a lot of times when you say hood rat, people think you're just talking about black women. There's a lot of white hood rats. There's more white hood rats in America than anywhere else in the world. Maybe Russia. It's definitely them too. There's more white people in prison than anywhere else in the world than Russia and the U.S. I think Russia's number one, the U.S. is second. That has the most white people in prison. That's about it, man. Keep it up, y'all, but have a realistic amount. Because if you don't have an amount and it's like, oh man, that ain't enough. We want, X, and you aiming for stuff that you can't make a real argument for in Congress, that you can't. And really, I say Congress, but it's not Congress, it's to the American people. If you can make a real argument to the American people, then you go for the highest amount that can pass people's minds. And when it ain't even on the goddamn budget over 30 years, ain't nobody has a real reason to complain. So that's why the amount was what it was. So I would say, don't be the people that are constantly bitching. Have a set amount and don't budge from that. That's the agenda. And I say it should be $3 trillion to at least $3 trillion. And that should just be what you shoot for in the government, because there's ways you can work it in the private sector. You can make it 5 trillion if you're fancy. It might take longer with other ways in the private sector. But I'm just saying, like, going to the American people and saying, hey, this is history, this shit ain't cool, and have a good argument, like Marianne Wilson had. Williamson, not Wilson. Then you do that. So that's it. I'm about to go inside and call it a day.